overall, I found this article to be very interesting. There were different elements that really surprised me about it because there were some parts where that seemed very, very optimistic and very, very hopeful, but then there were some at the same time where it seemed like this was the end of humanity and that um, there were certain notions that were very interesting that this author took. One of them in particular was I think it was in one of the last one of the last paragraphs is that he says that this is something that we deserved, not morally, but basically ecologically, which I thought was a very interesting notion. To notion that all of humanity kind of deserved this in some way, shape, or form. I thought it was kind of just haunting to really kind of say that and to notion to that. Well, on a certain degree, that might have been true, but that was one thing that I just thought was a very interesting, kind of profound insight that he had that I'm not necessarily I agree with, but it was a very different point of view too. I also thought it was just interesting to compare this to different past pandemics and different past infectious diseases that have really ravaged humanity and all that. And one of the most interesting points in my own that I was thinking of, he goes that this is not ravaged humanity like different diseases like whether it's smallpox or yellow fever or what have you. And so it's like when I was reflecting upon that, I'm like, well, maybe not yet, or that we fully understand though. It's like there's still a lot of damage being done, and is still going to happen. So I'm curious to know if that was more along the lines of like the actual symptoms of that disease, um, and that the one that we're dealing with now is a lot more mellow than past ones where the symptoms have been so severe and so crippling and everything else. But at the same time, like I said, we still have had over 135,000 people that have died since the last time that I checked. Um, and so a few questions that I do have. The first one is the article talks about how um, infectious diseases have been controlled and not conquered. Can we even really say that infectious diseases are being controlled right now? Um, just because of everything going on, it seems like everything is spreading more and more quickly, and so to say that we're even controlling it is, I think, kind of a stretch. Um, it's the fact that our world is a more connected one, a good or a bad thing. And lastly, they mention how different diseases still ravage, third world nations, like I mentioned earlier. Why do you think that COVID has hit, more developed nations like the U.S. and different, Western European countries a lot harder than we've heard of, about in, less developed nations, whether it's down in Africa um, or in the Middle East or what have you. And that possibly could be going back to my second question. So a lot to think about in this article.